One of the biggest concerns that the Detroit Lions have had over the last couple of years in terms of their roster has been the sheer volume and amount of injuries that have piled up over the seasons. And this year is already facing off to have that same problem. We're going to talk about it in today's episode, folks, so stay tuned.
It started with an owner who had a last name fans despised, hiring a coach that the experts thought was crazy,
But I got a plan, I swear to you.
who traded for a QB that was said to be washed up. They said the Detroit Lions would never amount to anything, that it would always be the same old Lions. But this team, our team, has a new identity, defined and expressed by the crazy head coach,
Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes, I will beat your ass.
led by the QB that nobody thought was good. Motor City Mania is in full swing and ready to start. So join the show and be prepared for kneecap biting, because Motor City Mania starts right now.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM, Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and we're diving in right now. So I just want to say, welcome all back to the channel. Thank you all for your view. Thank you all for your patience. Thank you all for your support. Just want to again say God bless. Thank you all for everything that you do, and let's dive into this content. And again, I also just want to say this because I don't want to let it pass me by. Thank you all for subscribing back to the channel. You all have been absolutely amazing. Absolutely just fantastic. I'm so thankful to everybody getting the subscriber count back up to over 1,000. Well on our way to getting back to where we used to be. Much kudos, much thanks, much love and appreciation to Derek for all the help and support that he's given me. And again, much love and support and appreciation for everything that the Detroit Lions community of YouTubers has done for me as well. So thankful for each and every one of you. With that having been said, let's get into the content. So, here's the thing, folks. We as Lions fans have gone through this rodeo before, and it sucks because we know exactly what I'm about to say here. The Lions have had a problem over the last couple of years when it comes to the injury bug. Because every single time we get at some point in the season, we always deal with injuries, and it always seems to be a massive flurry of them. And right now, the Lions are kind of dealing with that. And the problem is that it literally happened within the span of 1 week. Because if you think about it, when we were going into the Kansas City Chiefs game, we really didn't have any injuries, so to speak. But between that game to the Seattle Seahawks game finishing this week, we have added a whole slew of guys to the injury report in terms of not only how significant the injury is, but also how significant the player we've lost is to the team's ability to win and function. And so what we're going to talk about here is those injuries and what their most significance is. So let's get it started here. Now, I'm going to say this right now. I already know that for most people, the biggest injury that they're wanting to talk about is the injury to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. This was news that broke very late last night, probably around 6, 7 o'clock. I didn't think that it was wise to make a video that late, so I figured, you know what, I'm going to put this information into a video talking about all of the injuries in general, because while C.J. Gardner-Johnson is definitely a big injury, a lot of other guys are big injuries too, and I don't want to take away from their significance as well. So that's why I decided to do it in this episode. But here's the thing. C.J. Gardner-Johnson's injury to his chest or pectoral muscle, at least what we've been told, is that it's a feared injury, and I put heavy emphasis on that word. It's feared that he has potentially tore that muscle and he might be out for the season. We have not yet heard or been confirmed that that is actually the word or the case with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Now, I will say this. One of the things that I know for a fact is that C.J. Gardner-Johnson, after the game against the Seattle Seahawks, said that he was feeling fine. Now, that might have been him just putting up some macho bravado scene, or he actually does feel fine, and maybe what we're dealing with here is something that is significantly less serious than a torn pectoral muscle or some other type of muscle. It could be a strain, it could be something else. We don't know. All we do know is that I keep trying to say his actual name. All we know is that C.J. Gardner-Johnson is dealing with some sort of an injury. And since we don't know the severity of the injury, I'm at least going to go on the cautious side of things here and say that chances are highly likely that at the very least he's probably going to miss a few games till that way they can allow the injury to fully heal or at least get back to a position where he can play. Now, I don't know, again, how severe the injury is or what type of injury it is, but I will say this. if it was actually a torn pectoral muscle, there's no way in thunder C.J. Gardner-Johnson would have come back on the field after he left it when he sustained the injury in the first place. So for me, I find it a little bit odd that that it's being reported that he's feared to have a torn pectoral muscle when we don't actually have a confirmatory report that says he actually did have that muscle tore. At the moment right now, we're basing that off of complete speculation and rumor. We don't actually have anything confirmatory to the note. So I'm going to wait and see what actually comes out in regards to the injury and how actually severe it is before I make a judgment one way or the other. But in my opinion, chances are likely that C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to be at least down for the next couple of games. How many? I don't know, but I would probably say at least 2 or 3. At least until I get more information as far as the actual extent of the injury and how severe it is. But again, that's most likely the first and most severe injury that the Lions have sustained so far. The next couple of injuries that are even bigger, or not bigger, but even more big, is in terms of, man, I'm stumbling over my tongue, are even as big, not more big, even as big as C.J. Gardner-Johnson's are David Montgomery's injury, James Houston's injury, and you also have the injury to Big V. Now, I'm going to talk about these injuries kind of at a clip here. As far as David Montgomery's injury, it seems like Montgomery, for the most part, has evaded serious injury. At first, there were reports that it might be a bone bruise. But in fact, so far, all we've heard is that it's a pretty bad thigh contusion or a thigh bruise. And that, as according to Dan Campbell said, David Montgomery is considered day-to-day. Now, whether or not that means David Montgomery is going to be back up in the lineup against the Falcons, I don't know. I consider it highly unlikely. But it seems like that instead of Montgomery being out for 6-8 weeks, we're talking about maybe a week or 2 here. So that is a lot better news than what was initially feared when we first heard of the injury in the Seattle Seahawks game as it was still ongoing. Now, however, one injury that is a bit problematic for a lot of Lions fans is the injury to James "the Problem" Houston. James Houston has already been confirmed, and again, I keep making sure to put that out there, confirmed, feared, rumored. These words have a lot of significance. They have meaning. They are important when we're having this kind of conversation. But James Houston's injury has been confirmed that he has a fractured ankle and that he is likely going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. And with that kind of an injury happening, the Lions are likely to put James Houston on IR for at least 4 weeks. So that way, okay, his roster spot becomes available to potentially pick up somebody or bring up somebody from the practice squad to fill in. So that is at least one likely outcome that the Lions could do with James Houston now that they know exactly what kind of injury he has and likely how long he's going to be out. And again, talking about Big V here. Sorry, I am still a little under the weather. Big V, we know it's a knee injury, but what we don't know is how severe or how significant the injury is because even Dan Campbell doesn't know the answer to that injury. But considering Big V's injury history in the past in terms of his back and other things, I'd be willing to bet that the Lions are probably going to be conservative in rushing him back. You do have Graham Glasgow for a reason. I'm willing to bet that Big V's probably going to be down for at least a week or 2. So that's just, again, my thoughts, my opinions on the matter. But there's also other injuries. Again, Taylor Decker missed this week's game against the Seattle Seahawks with a foot injury. Emmanuel Mosley has still not come back yet from his ACL tear, but he has been practicing. I'm hoping he plays against the Falcons this week. And you have also other injuries such as Josh Pascal, Khalil Dorsey, and a couple of others. But the point of the matter is that what I'm trying to get across to y'all is that the injuries have been coming in fast and furious ever since pretty much the end of the Chiefs game all the way till the end of the Seattle game. So you're talking about a 10-day span. All of these injuries have just literally reared their ugly heads. Now again, those big injuries that I'm talking about, such as to Houston, to Montgomery, to Decker, to C.J. Gardner-Johnson, all of those injuries are big. But the one thing I can say in terms of the injuries is that unlike times past, we actually have some depth that actually will allow the Lions to be able to move forward without having to worry about a potential drop-off in terms of overall production or talent. Such case up points for being with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, depending upon how long he's out, we do have 3 other very high-quality safeties in Tracy Walker, Brian Branch, and Kirby Joseph. So even though C.J. Gardner-Johnson is likely going to be out for at least the very minimum a couple of weeks, depending upon, again, the severity of the injury and the type of injury, the Lions have plenty of good safety depth to fill in his stead. So I'm not at all worried about that one. It does suck to lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson, again, depending upon how severe it is, for any period of time, because of the type of leader that Gardner-Johnson is for this defense. Now, as far as with James Houston is concerned, again, James Houston is a situational pass rusher, and when he pass rushes, he has a good chance to get after the quarterback. However, though, again, there is a backup. There is a guy that can come in and can play that we haven't seen in a long time. That's Romeo Okwara. Again, Romeo Okwara is fully healthy from his original Achilles tear way back about a year and a half ago. He's just been waiting for an opportunity to get back on the field. This would be his chance to get back out on the field, be productive, and show that he can still play. So again, bad news for James Houston. Hope he comes back just as strong. Hope he comes back feeling a lot better. But again, we do have a quality backup in Romeo Okwara who can come in, and we should be able to maintain the same type of production without much drop-off. Now, the other one is David Montgomery. Now, here's the thing. Montgomery's injury is a little bit problematic because it's like, okay, here. Montgomery's style of running is very, very unique to the Lions because it's like, okay, here. He's our bell cow back, and every team usually has a bell cow back. But here's the thing. Outside of the bulldozer type of back that David Montgomery is, we don't really have another option like him because Craig Reynolds is not David Montgomery. He has a similar playing style, but he's not the same type of player. So for me, it's like, okay, who do you potentially bring in to fill in for David Montgomery while he's dealing with that bad thigh bruise? Well, you have some options. I already know that the Lions have a guy by the name of Zonovan Knight that's on the practice squad. A lot of people say that he has some good prospects. A lot of people have said that he's actually a decent guy that the Lions might want to bring up from the practice squad, so there's an option. But there's also some free agent options that the Lions may want to consider. I know a lot of people would love to bring in Kareem Hunt, but I don't think the Lions are going to get Kareem Hunt, especially what happened last night to the Browns, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to bring any light to that injury, but again, I just want to say I hope and pray for Nick Chubb, and I hope that he gets back stronger than ever, but I'm pretty confident that Kareem Hunt is most likely going to go to the Browns because of what happened to Nick Chubb last night. But another guy that's a free agent that I know the Lions could potentially go after is a guy that used to play, I think it was for the Cowboys, and Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones is a pretty seasoned veteran. Again, he would be a good fill-in, but he's not going to be anybody that we would expect to be a long-term solution. So again, the Lions do have potential options, either with the practice squad or going to free agency if they felt the need to do so. So again, there are options. As I said with Big V, obviously Glasgow came in, didn't miss a beat, so I'm not worried about that at all. And then finally, the other big injury is Taylor Decker. I expect that he should be back. He was listed as doubtful to play last week against the Seattle Seahawks. I expect that he should play against the Falcons after having a full week of rest and the weekend to rest up as well. So I do expect that Decker will be back. Excuse me. Now, I will say two other things before I go really quickly here. I know a lot of people, because of the injuries to James Houston and the injuries to Josh Pascal, and because of the problem that the pass rushing unit is having, there's been a lot of chatter, there's been a lot of chipper talk about the Lions going out and wanting to get Chase Young. I'm going to say this right now. I don't think that's a smart idea. And I know that sounds contradictory because of how vocal I've been about how bad the pass rush has been. But the reason why I don't think it's good, I don't think it's a good idea trading for Chase Young is a very simple one. It's not what Brad Holmes does. Brad Holmes does not make trades like that, and you have to consider this other problem here. What kind of compensation are you going to have to give up to get to freaking Chase Young? Again, I'm pretty confident that the Washington Commanders are not just going to trade Chase Young for next to nothing. They're going to want some decent draft capital. And again, if there's one thing we know about Brad Holmes is that he does not like trading decent draft capital. He'll trade a fourth rounder on down, but we have yet to see him trade anything higher than that. And I don't think that the Washington Commanders are going to part with so partial of a, freaking meager return on investment. Again, Chase Young used to be a first-round draft pick. Like, come on now. I don't think the Commanders are going to trade for so little. So, in my opinion, it's like, okay, the compensation is a bit problematic. But then the other problem is this. We're talking about injuries here. What's the biggest problem with Chase Young? His injury history. The guy has been injured quite a substantial bit in his NFL career. Why would you potentially trade a whole bunch of draft capital for a guy that can't stay on the field that long? Yes, he might be able to help the pass rush. He probably would help the pass rush. But for how long before he's out with an injury? And now you spend all that draft capital just to go and get a guy that's not going to be able to play that very much on a potential that it might work out. Again, this is the problem with the weighing of costs and return on investment when you're making trade talks like this. And again, I just don't see Brad Holmes making this kind of move. I don't think it's smart because there is a lot of risk that's being associated with a player like Chase Young. Yes, he has talent. Yes, he is a good player. But the injury concerns and the cost it would take to get him is just simply not worth it, in my opinion. And again, I would love to have any potential solution to fix the pass rush. But that is one solution that I think is just way too costly for the Lions to make right now. And the last thing I want to talk about is this. I know prior to the season happening, there were a lot of my fans, there were a lot of regular fans in general, that were not particularly happy, especially with what happened against the Chiefs, because it looked like our players were kind of a little bit rusty as far as the starters, because they didn't play in the preseason. Well, I'm going to say this right now. The preseason is 3 weeks long. 3 weeks, there are 3 chances that your team can lose players due to injury, and it wasn't even for a game that was meaningful. My whole point is this. This is why you start having players rest in the preseason versus starting them in the preseason, because this kind of injury list can hit you hard and it can hit you fast. Again, like I talked about in the very beginning of this episode, all of these injuries, most of them came within the last 10 days. If you can imagine having this kind of an injury list starting the season, you're already in a bad position, folks. So the fact that the Lions did start off a little bit rusty, okay, that's kind of the drawback you have by not starting your starters. But what you are doing is preserving their health for when the games actually do matter. So again, my whole point is this. These injuries are yet a caution. They are a cautionary tale. They are a warning for when people want to say, well, we should have started our starters in the preseason. I know that was 3 weeks ago, but I know that was a conversation that a lot of people had, and I, for the most part, held my tongue on that one. But again, when I see an injury list like this, it's like, okay, now I can clearly see and understand why Dan Campbell and the Lions did not start their starters, because they knew something like this was going to happen. I'm pretty confident that they weren't expecting it was going to happen this fast. But again, not playing your starters in the preseason allows you to be able to at least somewhat better, absorb an injury bug like this. So that way you got other players that can come in and they're not already behind because, hey, we've been having to do this since preseason. Now we're only having to do it right now. So that's my whole point here. But again, the problem is that as we Lions fans know, this is an issue that we've been having for years with the whole injury concern. Whether it's been a soft tissue injury, whether it's been because something got tore, something got broken. It's a thing that we as Lions fans have become very well acquainted with, and it's something that we've gotten really, annoyed with. But again, the one thing about this time around that makes me feel a lot better is that we should be getting some players back here relatively quickly, such as Taylor Decker, such as Emmanuel Mosley. Those guys will really, really be a big help to our both offense and defense when they come back. And on top of that, the fact that we have some decent depth for injuries like C.J. Gardner-Johnson is also something that makes me feel a lot better compared to where we've been in times past. But I think I've done a decent job talking about this as far as, the depth in terms of injuries, in terms of the contrast between playing starters, not playing starters, the trade rumors in regards to Chase Young, so on and so forth. But having said all that, I look forward to your comments. Again, please be respectful. I can't state that highly enough. And with that having been said, I'm going to say it's time to call this episode good. So I just want to say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Or do all 3 of them. That would be even better. I encourage y'all, please, if you have subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so, or you just subscribed and you've not had a chance to do so, please, by all means, hit that bell notification icon that's at the bottom of the page. Turn it on so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. I also encourage y'all, please, to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere that you can with anybody and everybody that you can. Again, so thankful we're already over 1,000 subscribers, but let's keep that subscriber count going up. Let's get back to where this channel used to be. Let's keep those watch hours going up. We're doing so well. Let's keep the drive on going. And with that having been said, folks, I just want to say thank you all for, again, tuning into the show. God bless, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.